Red flag, so slow down. I can see our Checkered Flag podcast being quite spicy.
5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast.
Welcome to Spotlight Inside the Circuit here in Singapore. I'm Jenny Gao, and we are thrilled to have you here as our special guests. And it's a very exciting night for us. It's a live podcast. We haven't done this too many times, so you're in for the ride. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our guests. So, the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson, the F1 TV strategist and analysis, Ruth Buscombe, and sports host and presenter for Singapore's national broadcaster, MediaCorp. It is Edward Russell. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. And you might have noticed that there is a chair at the end here, so we might have some special guests to welcome as well. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the Thunder for coming as well. Just a quick question to start off with. Obviously, Singapore is electric at the moment. Edward Russell,
yes.
No relation to George Russell?
Not that I know of. My parents haven't said anything. We are about the same height, but I think that's where the similarities end, unfortunately, because I would love his driving ability, I'd love his car collection as well, but no, he does the racing, I just talk about it.
That is such a shame, but we're delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Because George couldn't make it, was that the issue?
Well, he's got a few things going on this weekend, as most drivers do. In fact, he might not even be here yet. Last time I saw, he was sitting down on a plane. Don't know if he's arrived. You'll have to excuse if we're jet-lagged a little bit. I think most of us, with the exception of you, have flown in today. So we're all a bit etchy. But just tell us a little bit about why it's so special for Singapore to have this race. It's the 16th running of the race this weekend.
Yeah, and it remains the crown jewel in Singapore's sporting calendar. It quite literally takes center stage in the CBD. You can't miss it. If you're a Formula One fan or not, you can't help but be kind of carried away by the Formula One fever. I still get a thrill personally that the road I was driving 60 kilometers an hour down a couple of days ago, you now see Formula One cars doing about 325 k's an hour down it. And Singapore's skyline, apart from today when you can't really see it because it's absolutely pouring, is fantastic. And what a backdrop that is to what should be a really interesting race that I'm sure we'll get onto. It has a lot of stake.
Oh, yes. Andrew, let me come to you. Have you been here for every year, or is there a couple missing?
I've missed a handful, Jenny.
Okay.
Most of them, yeah.
What's been one of the standout memories for you?
Well, there's been lots of incident and drama here, some of it more controversial than others, as everybody I'm sure knows, but I think my...
What are you referring to, Andrew? I just don't know.
But my highlight, I think, was last year when there was a sort of live news story developing. Max Verstappen was refusing to talk or answer questions in the official press conferences, and being in the middle of that was, it's always an exciting moment. The adrenaline's pumping, in my job at least, when that sort of thing's going on.
Yes, Andrew is the first person on the ground to most of the stories, and we're very lucky at the BBC to have him and his capabilities to support us when we're on air. And Ruth, obviously you've had lots of different roles within your time in F1, but just tell us what's been the standout of your time here in Singapore.
Well, first off, this was the race as a strategist that everyone is excited to go to. It is the strategy blue ribbon event. So, for drivers, sometimes they say Monaco, sometimes they say Spa. Strategists, everyone wants to win or do well at this Grand Prix because it's the hardest race strategically. Got high degradation, very high chance of safety cars. And so I haven't actually won this race as a head of race strategy. However, as a head of race strategy, I have actually led more laps than Max Verstappen. It's your yearly
more
reminder.
Applause if you'd like to, that's fine.
Thank you. Your yearly reminder that I will be saying at least 20 times in the next 24 hours. Antonio Giovinazzi has led 4 laps under my helm as we went for the safety car strategy that, alas, did not work. Max Verstappen has led a total of 3 laps here. Will not be taking questions at this time.
And it's interesting, actually, Max Verstappen has never won here, and it's one of the only racetracks on the circuit currently that he hasn't won at. So just put that in your head for later on, and we will address that as we go through. But how important, as we said, is the continued success of this racetrack and hosting a Grand Prix that could be a title decider this weekend, because the Constructors' Championship, McLaren look like they could seal it this weekend.
Well, absolutely, and I think we'll get onto it in terms of the title challenge, but if you're somebody like Oscar Piastri, who had a pretty abject weekend in Baku and perhaps a little bit of jitters, this is not the place you want to come to, where the slightest of errors is going to result in you going into the wall. So it is going to be thrilling. Hopefully, well, I don't know, from my point of view, because I'll be at the circuit, I'm hoping the rain gets out of the way now, but actually if it does rain on Sunday, as an objective viewer, it might make it even more interesting.
Ruth, you obviously like a bit of rain when it comes to strategy. What are you predicting?
Well, I've had 2 wet races here as a head of race strategy. One in 2017 when there was the infamous collision where there was 3 DNFs on lap 1, Max the 2 Ferraris. I think Ferrari went ham on Twitter, I think is the technical term. And that just shows that the challenge here gets even stronger in wet. It was a dastardly crossover, because by crossover I mean what's the point where you go from wet tyres to slicks or slicks to wet. The same story we had in 2023, and the tricky thing here is it might sound weird, but our entire data, all our learning mostly comes from dry running, where we have a sun that's drying things out. It's actually really hard to calculate a crossover at a night track where you don't have the sun, so a lot of our data set isn't there. So as a strategic challenge, I would absolutely love a wet to dry crossover. Obviously, I work now in broadcast, so I just want the championship to just keep rolling to the next race and the next race. But yeah, I'd like to have that, and a return of Godzilla for his 3rd appearance. I'm sure we can get into that more later.
We can. Andrew, when it comes to this challenge, this circuit particularly, wet race, dry race, it's one that's right on a knife edge for the driver's skills and the news stories that surround that as well.
Well, it's the full package this weekend. You've got the drama on track, as you were talking, the physical challenge for the drivers because of the humidity, which we're seeing in a very physical way now. It's the toughest race of the season for them, also because it's so long. It's nearly 2 hours, which is as long as a Grand Prix can be. And then, as well, there's the off-track stuff. It's become one of the central races on a financial basis for the whole sport since it started in 2008. Lots of deals get done here. The high rollers come here to do business. And you really feel that in the paddock. There's always big names milling around. So it's just a really, the city itself has a really enticing, intoxicating vibe anyway. And when you get down to the Marina Bay paddock, that just becomes sort of distilled into this sort of little sort of concentration of intrigue and Formula One at its purest.
Absolutely. Right, I'd like to welcome a special guest onto the stage. She will be driving this track this weekend. It's F1 Academy race winner, Alicia Palmowski. Alicia. Alicia, it's delightful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we've got lots of questions that people have asked already, but how are you and how are you looking forward to driving in Singapore?
Yeah, well, firstly, hello everybody. Hi guys, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, super excited for this weekend. This rain is crazy. It's just started pouring down with rain, having said that, but the climate is obviously extremely humid, so it's going to be a different challenge for the drivers this weekend, something that I haven't really experienced before, this level of humidity. So there's been a lot of physical preparation gone into it behind the scenes, done a lot of training in the gym with multiple layers on. Walking into my local gym with a coat on, I've got some weird looks, but it's been hectic, to be honest, but really happy to be here now and excited to get on track and get the action underway.
Amazing. Just tell us a little bit about your journey to this point, and I don't mean through the rain to here, but your journey into the world of F1 Academy.
Yeah, so for me, this is now my 10th year in motorsport actually already, so it really has been my whole life. I'm 19 years old now, so I started it back in go-karts, which is obviously where most drivers start. I raced in, actually, ironically, Daniel Ricciardo's karting series back over in the UK. Raced in that series for sort of 4 or 5 years, had great success, became double junior vice champion, before I then progressed into the world of car racing in Ginetta Juniors, which is, again, the championship that actually Lando Norris kick-started his car racing career in back in 2014. So I spent sort of 2 years in that championship before I then progressed on to single-seaters last year in the GB4 championship in the UK. And then now I'm here in F1 Academy, my first season, rookie year, so it's been a big, big learning curve with the support of Red Bull Racing, so it's a dream come true.
And let me just put this out there. It's not going too badly, is it, for your first season?
Not too bad, no. Obviously, I'd always want more. We're currently P5 in the championship, only 20 points or so away from P3. We've had multiple podiums this year. I've qualified second on the last 3 consecutive races, so I'm gunning for that first pole position. But it's been such an incredible experience. I mean, to be on the F1 Academy grid with the support of a Formula One team, the amount that I've learned this year, honestly, is incredible from a driver development perspective. I mean, I'm a completely different person sat here now, different person and driver than the driver who entered Shanghai back in March at the start of the season. So it really has been incredible. I'm still learning. It's a process. I'll still be learning at Las Vegas at the last round this year. But I'm just loving the atmosphere of being on an F1 race weekend as well. I'm just the biggest F1 fan, so it really is a dream come true.
Alicia, what sort of contact do you have with the Red Bull F1 team? How do they mentor you towards eventually ending up in that sort of direction?
A lot of contact, to be honest. They are so supportive. The support network that I have from Red Bull, from every aspect, is just incredible. Not only from the driving front, but the media and fitness standpoint. There's support there, just a message away if I need anything. The access that we have as the F1 Academy drivers, the 3 supported Red Bull-backed drivers, we all have equal access to the facilities in Milton Keynes back in the factory as the main Red Bull juniors. So just before, actually last week, before coming out here to Singapore, I was over in Milton Keynes doing hours on the sim, on the Red Bull sim, the same sim that the F1 drivers use to try and prepare for Singapore, learn the circuits, get all the data from the sim, and also compare the data to some of the best drivers that have gone through Red Bull. So again, as I mentioned before, from a driver development point of view, the amount that I've learned is just huge from Red Bull, so I'm extremely grateful to them all.
Alicia, I know you said you're getting used to being part of this F1 weekend in these major cities. How have you been getting used to being part of F1 Academy, and what's it been like in terms of, I know that there was a Netflix show released, Formula One, the Academy, which I was just wondering how much popularity that has brought to particularly your series. Has it had the effect, say, of something like Drive to Survive? And what's the public reception been to it?
Yeah, I would say it's been quite similar, to be honest. It's been incredible, the reception that the Netflix show has brought. Honestly, we do autograph sessions actually on each of the days on a race weekend, and the amount of young girls and young boys, actually just young people in general, that come up to us and say that we've inspired them to get involved in the sport, that they didn't even realise they could be involved in motorsport, not just from a driving perspective, but there's so many opportunities to get involved in motorsport, whether that be engineering or even the media side. There's so many opportunities. And I think what the Netflix show does actually a great job in showing is that there's not one stereotypical person who can succeed in motorsport. All the drivers on the grid come from different parts of the world. They've had different financial backgrounds, different family support networks, yet there's no reason why all of them can't succeed within motorsport. So I think it does a really great job in showcasing that.
Alicia, there's arguably only ever been one perfect lap of Singapore. I think all the drivers agree. Lewis Hamilton's 2018 pole lap is the only time you don't make any kind of micro error. So you can put it on pole here, even in Formula One, whilst not putting the perfect lap together. Obviously, we've dropped down from 23 corners down to 19. For you as a driver going into this race weekend, what are the trickiest parts of this circuit, and what's your favourite part of this circuit?
That's a great question. I'll tell you after FP1. I think I'm really excited for it. It's obviously, as you mentioned, an extremely technical circuit. It's an extremely long circuit as well. So for us in F1 Academy, it's around a 2-minute lap time. So we're still doing speeds of up to 150 mile an hour, but it's a long circuit, 19 corners, as you mentioned. So it's a huge challenge. And we do only have the one free practice session as well this weekend. So it varies in F1 Academy. Sometimes we just have the one free practice. Sometimes we have the 2, whereas this weekend we just have the 1. There's been no prior testing here, so we literally have the 40-minute session to try and learn the track and get up to speed. So, as you mentioned, I doubt in qualifying anybody will do the perfect lap, but I think it's just about keeping calm, to be honest, and not overdriving, because I think 95% might actually be enough to be on pole, just making sure we minimise all those small errors and mistakes. So I'm excited for the challenge, though. It's my type of circuit.
And physicality-wise, we know this track really bites the drivers. There's lots of things you can do to help and prepare for that. Just talk us through some of the things that you've been able to do apart from wearing the coat to the gym, which I love.
That has been the main thing, actually, to be honest, just training over the last sort of 2-3 weeks in layers, as I mentioned before, obviously just trying to evoke a sweat response and just try to get the body used to being under that amount of stress, under that amount of heat. But also something that I've been doing is training. I'm fortunate enough to have a sim in my house, so it's not like the Red Bull simulator, but just a little sim just to do some practice. And I've been doing that in a lot of layers as well. It gets very hot in that room, obviously, with all the servers and everything. So because the mental concentration is also another thing as the physical point of view, not being able to switch off. Obviously, being a street circuit as well, the walls are extremely close, so that amount of mental capacity under that amount of heat stress will be really important. A lot of hot baths as well. Basically, I've just been living my life really hot, to be honest, just make as much heat as possible. So hopefully it'll have worked.
I mean, it sounds delightful, but I'm sure actually it's quite an aggressive strategy. The F1 drivers lose up to 3 or 4 kilos just on race day, which really goes to say how aggressive this is. And actually, it's not just sitting in a car and driving fast, is it? There's so much more that goes into actually being a great driver.
Absolutely, there is so much than just the driving element. I think what actually gets on my nerves a little bit, to be honest, sometimes is at the end of a race, obviously the winner and the top 3 drivers that have succeeded, they're the ones that go to the podium, they take all the limelight, they get all the praise, when actually there's such a big group of people behind the scenes in all of the race teams who don't seem to get any credit a lot of the time, when actually I wouldn't even turn a wheel on track without a lot of these mechanics and engineers. So there's so many people involved. It's a very technical sport, data-wise. There's a lot of different car setups you can trial. It's very analytical. It's not just, we don't just jump in a car and drive like you would away from this place here today, for example. So it's a lot harder than probably people realise, but that's why when you succeed, it makes the feeling a lot more worth it.
What are the demands that the heat puts on you in the car? You've got a 20-minute, 25-minute race to face up to. What exactly is it? How is it affecting you? How does it make driving more difficult?
I think just the general dehydration, to be honest, because obviously we do have shorter races in F1 Academy. They're 30-minute races compared to, obviously, F1 drivers can be in there for 90 minutes. And we actually have to get in the car for up to 40, 50 minutes before we actually race as well. So the amount of time that we actually spend in the car is a long, long time, especially when you sat there stationary, not actually doing anything. So I think a big challenge is, as I mentioned before, the mental strength, having that capacity to not get distracted and to not start missing braking points, making little mistakes. You've constantly got to be 100% there. So I think it's going to be just about being hydrated as much as possible before we go out there. I'll have a better idea to tell you what it was like after the weekend than right now. But yeah, I think it'll be a huge challenge, but everybody is in the same boat, and it's a lot of our first times experiencing this. So yeah, I don't know if I'm looking forward to it. I am, but I'm not at the same time, so we'll see.
The main question in Formula One is to ice bath or not to ice bath as a Formula One driver. The debate rages on. It used to be very few drivers would ice bath. Now most of them do. So the big question that I'm asking is, are you team pre-cooling and sitting in an ice bath to lower your body temperature down, for anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about? Or are you not? Because I wouldn't care about the performance improvement. I would have to avoid it.
Me too. I think I'd have to avoid it, to be honest, because there's a very fine line for me, being British as well. There's like 20 degrees is nice, so I'm either freezing or it's way too hot. So I feel like I'd probably die of like hypothermia if I went in an ice bath. So I don't know if that's something that I want to happen, so probably not.
Despite the fact that it is going to be quite uncomfortable in that car, is this a race that you're really looking forward to? And I assume, having watched Singapore on TV for so long, what's it like to now actually be a part of this?
Well, it's so cool. It's honestly a dream come true. This place, especially at night, I think what it'll look like visually, it's just so incredible. Most of our sessions this week, so we've got FP and our 2 races on Saturday and Sunday, are both at around 3 p.m. So peak hotness, so which I'm not looking forward to. But we actually qualify at around 7 p.m, so at night time, which will add to the challenge as well, actually, because visually breaking references, just the curbs, the shadows on circuit, it can visually look quite a lot different, and it often feels a lot faster as well at night time with the dark. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think this circuit is one that I've always wanted to race on, being really technical. I love the challenging circuits, the start-stop technical nature. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, fingers crossed for this weekend. I think we have some... Oh, don't go too soon. Don't go too soon. I love it, but wait. We have a microphone, and I think there are some questions. So if anyone has a question, please put your hand up. That'd be lovely, and we will get a microphone to you. And whilst you're thinking of a question that you want to ask, please, I will ask this one from Sydney in London, who says, Alicia, who was your sporting hero growing up, and why?
Oh, that's a great question. There's been a few, actually, to be honest. I think my first one was Jenson Button, because that was sort of my earliest memories of motorsport, really. I was born in 2006, so he was world champion when I was 3-4 years old. But I remember him back in like Braun GP. It was really, really cool. Being British as well, I really looked up to him. And then now, sort of in the last 10 years or so, it sounds like the obvious answer, but it is Max Verstappen for me, to be honest. I think he's obviously one of the best drivers of all time, I'd say, and the level that he's performing at is incredible. And also his mental strength. I think when things aren't necessarily going as smoothly as he'd like them to, he continues to just perform and deliver these results that seem impossible sometimes. So I think he's a great person that I really admire.
I saw that you did a bit of a sit-down video with Max recently. What's one tip he gave you as a driver? Not necessarily here in Singapore, but just in your driving career as a whole.
Something that he mentioned, actually, which has got nothing to do with driving advice or anything like that. He mentioned how one of his, not regrets, but something that he wished he'd have done differently was just to embrace 2023, which was a year, obviously, when he had great success with Red Bull, had the most race wins in a season. So he said that he was so sort of focused in the moment, went from race weekend to race weekend, just so focused on that individual race, on winning it and performing and delivering the best result, that he forgot to sort of embrace the experience and enjoy what he's achieving and realise that the level that he's performing at is incredibly high. So I think something that I'd learnt from Max is to just embrace the experience. If it's going well, if it's not, it's still a dream come true, and to be grateful for the opportunity that we have right now, because we're extremely privileged.
Right, we have a question at the back. If you'd like to stand up, say your name and where you're from, maybe.
Hi, my name is Zoeb Bai. So my question is to Alicia. So love F1, which is why I'm here as well. And amazing that you are part of the Red Bull Academy as well. What I want to ask is, I think Monaco is one of the toughest tracks out there. After Monaco, what would you rate as the toughest track according to you?
Love that question. I've never raced at Monaco, actually, but I know that would be another level. But for me, I'd say the most difficult one would be Jeddah, actually, which I raced at earlier on in the year, around April. I always say it's sort of a bit like a fast Monaco, in a way. The walls are so extremely close, but the speeds are so much higher than Monaco. And I just found that the mental capacity as well and concentration that you need for Jeddah, I felt like I was holding my breath until the start-finish line every lap, and then you just breathe a sigh of relief when you've done a good lap in particular. So, yeah, I'm imagining Singapore will be up there as well, to be honest, as most challenging, especially with the humidity, as we keep speaking about. But yeah, I'd say Jeddah was the toughest one so far, definitely.
Excellent. If anyone else has got another question, we'll read one out here, but put your hand up, that'd be lovely, and we'll get the microphone to you. In the meantime, Julia Lorison says, how do you deal with the intense scrutiny of your every move in your career, often in lifetime, and being filmed for Netflix, etc.?
I really enjoy it, actually, to be honest.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I know a lot of drivers, they don't necessarily like the media and all the cameras in their face, but it's something that I've just had throughout my career, to be honest. It feels quite natural. And being in F1 Academy in particular, I have noticed quite a big difference in terms of the amount of media coverage, and with Netflix crew there 24/7. But I think it's all part of the opportunity and all part of the experience. And I always say that I feel like I'm living a mini F1 driver lifestyle in a way, and media is a big part of it, obviously speaking to sponsors as well, as this is a huge element. So I'm not only learning a lot about how to drive and how to become a quicker, faster driver, but also learning about how to engage with the media, and which is an extremely important element of it. So learning a lot.
Sam also asked, when it comes to being a role model, easy for me to say, how do you find that?
Crazy, to be honest, because I just see myself as I'm a normal girl from Manchester in the UK, come from a normal family, and so just to be in this position now, racing on an F1 race weekend as a support series to F1, to be a role model, if I can just inspire one young girl to realise that they can be involved in motorsport, then that's an incredible feeling. I still find it strange because, as I mentioned, I am just a normal person, but it's incredible. And already in my short time in F1 Academy, the numbers in terms of female participation within the sport has increased massively just across the last year, 2 years. So the direction that the sport's going in is changing rapidly, and it's awesome to be immersed in the middle of that and witnessing it happening.
Well, that leads me on to ask one final question, which I get asked all the time, I'm sure you do as well. How long do you think it will be until we see a female F1 driver?
Hopefully sooner rather than later. I think it's definitely a when, not if scenario. Obviously, I'd love for it to be me, if it could be, but equally, I'd love for it to happen because I'm confident it can happen. I know physically that it can happen because the managing director, Susie Wolf of F1 Academy, she's showcased that females can drive modern-day F1 cars. I think it's really exciting for the future, so I can't wait.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please give your hands together for Alicia Palmaski. I suppose I need to ask you guys all the same question. When do you think that'll happen, Ruth? When do you think we'll get a female F1 driver?
Well, I think the minimum is hopefully soon. The maximum length of time is 17 years, when Max's baby, Lily, whose mother is also the daughter of a 3-time world champion. So there's minimum 7 world championships genetically. I think in terms of the environment that child will be raised in, obviously hopefully driving for F1 Academy, I think that's going to be a world championship. Not definitely. I hope we do get to see, a F1 driver before then, but at least we've got that one safe in 17 years' time. I think she'll win it in the first year.
Max didn't.
Well, Max didn't have the Kelly DNA as well.
That's true.
This is breeding, it's evolution. No, but seriously, I think in terms of the grassroots level, that's what it all comes down to. It's inspiring the next generation, and so basically, it's about making sure that mums and dads take their sons and daughters karting. If you look at the numbers, I was involved with Susie Wolf's kind of Dare to Be Different program, which was the precursor to what we have now with the FIA Girls on Track initiatives and F1 Academy. And back then, when we looked at the statistics in 2016, it was somewhere between 2 to 3% of people in karting are female. And so if you think about the number of rubbish male drivers out there in that pyramid before
you said
if you just think about the number of rubbish drivers, I will put myself in that bracket. But the chances, if 2 to 3% of them are female, that the one that's going to be the one that makes it to F1, the one that's even going to make it to F2 is going to be female, is 50 to 1. I truly believe it's a numbers game. I always say if there's any kind of paper that says that a female couldn't be, a strategist, a race engineer, I've got one of those now too. I think there's no data to say we can't. I do think it's a numbers game, and I think that initiatives like the F1 Academy, everything that we're doing, our numbers, we released them, our half-term report as Formula One. We had 827 million fans first half of the year, which is about 1 in 8 people on Earth, which means about 1 in 16 people on Earth have had their heart broken by a scooter with Ferrari so far in this year. But more importantly than that, 43% of our viewers are female. I think it was like 42% are under 35. And so not only, have we got girls more likely to join karting, we've got girls more likely to watch it on TV. And my hope is that, we have the best person for the job, regardless of, gender, what country they're born in, what language they are. So, I think it's really looking forward to seeing where the future space goes.
Yeah, and I think it will just take that first female to break the barrier. I mean, you look at, for example, MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 have had female riders for a long time, and it's just become normal. And as a girl watching that, you think, yeah, I can do that, These girls can do it, other girls have done it. You just need that one person to really show that it's possible whenever that happens. And I think once you see one, you'll see 2 and 3, and it'll just become a regular occurrence.
Right, our second surprise guest has joined us, and I'm delighted to say, fresh off the plane I'm sure, it is Sauber team principal Jonathan Wheatley.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you're more than welcome. Thank you for joining the party and looking very resplendent as well. Thank you. Just run us through Sauber's season so far, because Obviously, it's been, would you say, relatively successful? How would you term it?
Yeah, I mean, so for those of you who don't know, I worked for Red Bull for 20 years, and previous to that, Renault. So I'm used to big teams. I'm used to teams winning championships and races on a regular basis, and going to the circuit expecting, or thinking at least you're in a position to win a race. So I knew very much when I went to Sauber that I'd have to have a different mindset, because it's very much a team on a transition phase to become the Audi Formula One team next year. So I wasn't expecting a huge amount, but actually I'd say that Mattia Binotto, the team at the factory, have done an incredible job of getting on top of the car from a car that was really underperforming, I think it's fair to say, for the first half of the season, and then put some upgrades on the car in Barcelona that started to work, and then 4 upgrades after that started to work, and yeah, before you know it, we were scoring points at nearly every race, and we got a podium with Nico Hülkenberg.
Jonathan, one of the things that's been interesting this year is that you and Mattia were brought in because the team was kind of in stasis. They weren't making the progress that Audi wanted. And since you and Mattia came in, it's been quite immediate to see the effect that you both have had. What did you learn through your 20 years with Red Bull that you've applied to Sauber, and how have you applied that to Sauber to get them into a position where Audi, when it enters F1 next year, is in the place it wants to be?
Well, I talked a little bit about where Sauber is at the moment, and where the project's leading to. And a modern Formula One team, I mean, we're here at another race, 24 races a year now. It's a huge undertaking on behalf of a team principal, or really anyone who attends every single race. So what first attracted me about the idea was working in a joint leadership structure with Mattia Binotto. And for those of you who may be not familiar with the name, Mattia's was at Ferrari for most of his entire life. And so both of us are very used to being in teams where winning championships is what you're there to exist and to do and deliver every year. So the idea of being able to share the responsibility with Mattia, for me, was hugely exciting, because number one, I've got a huge amount of respect for him, but also to bring together the car, to bring together chassis, powertrain. What we're doing next year is unbelievably ambitious. To build our own engine and to mate it to our own chassis is not a small thing to do at all. And what I've done, I suppose, is start looking at the communication structures, start looking at how the team runs. How do we put performance on the car? What are the structures in place? How open are the meetings? Are the meeting structures right? You know, it sounds like boring things, but does everyone know what they're supposed to do, what their job is, where it begins and ends? Have people got the confidence to speak up? You know, if you're in a meeting with some senior people there, is there a culture where you can make a mistake and learn from it, or is there a fear culture? And I've found everything so far.
When it comes to looking ahead to next year, obviously Audi is such a massive name, synonymous with motorsport. Transitioning from Sauber to Audi, exciting, daunting, all of the above and many other things?
Well, I don't want to upset a huge amount of Sauber fans out there, but it wasn't my reason for moving my family to Switzerland. Look, every now and then in your career, you get given an opportunity that is so compelling that I don't feel like I left a team. I was drawn towards this new project. It's hugely exciting. Just think about it. For those of you who can remember when Mercedes first entered the sport, you know, to have the biggest manufacturer in the world entering Formula One, what a hugely exciting journey this is.
So for those of you that don't know, Jonathan and I have been friends for 10 years. I was at the team that he now champions for 8 of those years. And then when I decided to leave, obviously, the leadership changed, it all went to pot, and then you had to come in to save the day. So that's just the main story of it. But so Jonathan really is telling the truth when it comes to the leadership culture in Sauber, because, you know, under Fred's stewardship, it was that lovely safe space. You've done such a wonderful job. But there is one thorn, actually there's 2 thorns in Sauber's history. That is the swimming pool chicane in Monaco, and it is the Singapore Grand Prix track. Try as we might, year after year, even when we had a particularly great car, we were never able to absolutely nail this Grand Prix. It's one of those Grand Prix we have to have lots of downforce. We only managed to get points once in 2018 by doing the riskiest strategy ever with Charles Leclerc. We had to qualify on this tyre that was a Hypersoft and pray to hold on to P10. What are your expectations? Because if there is ever a team that I want to score points this weekend, it is you. What are your expectations going into this race weekend? And have you finally managed to unlock the performance that has broken the Sauber Singapore curse?
I didn't realise it was so daunting. I was actually quite looking forward to it until now. I'm going to go back and reevaluate everything that we've done in terms of prep. Blimey, I think I've got to go. Do you know what? If we look at this, was it 2021 season with Max where he won every race? Sorry, 2022 won every single race. This race didn't win.
I actually led 4 laps here. I don't know if you know that. Antonio Giovinazzi.
I can't imagine what weird set of circumstances.
You've led 3.
But I guess what I'm saying, this is a very tricky circuit. And ever since we've been coming here, it's a physical challenge, not just for the drivers, but for everyone working in the sport here. I mean, literally everyone. It's extraordinary. And I can remember in the early days here, the drivers saying, look, you can train to be fit, but you can't train for bumps. And it's a very, very bumpy track. But it is such a challenge, and that's what I love about Formula One. It's a world championship. We go to all of these different circuits. They create different challenges for us, and our job is to unlock the car's potential.
Jonathan, you talk a lot about culture. As a leader and a team principal, you've come into a team that is used to fighting for points, and you want them to transition in a year's time to a team that is fighting for wins and possibly in the future race championships. How hard is it to change that mentality within the team?
It's the single biggest challenge we face, which is the people. Without the people, it's just an empty building with all these computers in and wind tunnels and things. It's all about the people. And I talk about culture change a lot, and I don't want that to be perceived as negative. What it is if you imagine an organisation which, as you know, Ruth, was just proud of putting 2 cars on track every weekend and being able to fix accident damage, to go from that level where it's almost surviving with a chronic lack of capital investment over the years to expanding into a proper modern Formula One team, a works Audi Formula One team. It's a huge journey to take people on. People are scared. People don't like change. There are these little silos. The way the building's constructed almost encouraged it because everyone's in a little locked room where you can do what you like with your team. So we're looking at and expanding the campus. We're looking at a culture program. We've got champions throughout the business, and we have to live that culture because that's where the performance comes from. Performance comes from people, not just drivers, but everyone in the team, understanding what their job is, what the direction of the team is, and having the full support from their managers.
Talking about people and culture, Jonathan, if I got my maths right, I think it's 40% of the team principals this year are former colleagues of yours from 30 plus years ago from the Benetton team, if anybody doesn't know. There's Jonathan Wheatley, Io Komatsu at Haas, Alan Permain now at Racing Bulls, and Steve Nielsen at Alpine. You were all sort of junior engineers together at Benetton as it was back in the day. What was it about that group of people what was it about that environment that has enabled you 4 to come on in the way that you have and have such leading roles in the sport together at the same time?
What's interesting, Andrew, is as you're going into the question, it makes you start to look back at things that you maybe, I'm always such forward looking, I don't really look back. But if I look back at it, I started work with Benetton as a mechanic in 1991. The French Grand Prix was my first Grand Prix with Nelson Piquet and Roberto Moreno. Some of you probably never even heard of them, but then John Barnard was technical director. So I walked straight into working with John Barnard and Pat Simmons. They disappeared for a little while to the Reynard project, and then in '92 they came back. So then I started working with Pat Simmons. Then Ross Brawn joined the company, Bob Bell. I mean, these legends of Formula One, hugely impressive people to learn from. And it was such a great culture at Enstone of developing new talent and bringing new talent into Formula One. They were, and you probably understand it now, you know me so well, they were disruptors. And that's what I love as well. I love being a disruptor in Formula One. And we were encouraged to think freely and do things differently. And there was a great culture. And Flavio is not as terrifying as he seems, you know. He was actually a really good manager. And we had some difficult conversations on the way into World Championships. And we never did it the easy way. And I think it just created this great culture for bringing on new talent.
And when you look at that group of people now, the team principals, it's called the Piranha Club, if you haven't heard of that expression before. You're one of them now. How is that? They're friends of yours. Some of them are new to you as a team principal, as are we all. It must be a strange dynamic now.
It's a good question, but I've been working on a sporting level with other teams for years and years and years. I've been in Formula One for 34 years now. I've got lots of friends up and down the paddock. And the thing with the white heat of competition is everyone understands that you have to take your team's position at some point. So we can do that, and we can do it in a way where it's clear that our team's position is not to be messed around with. But what you don't do, I don't do, is completely surprise someone and you never lie, you know? So if you want to keep that harmony going, then you say, look, I'm not going to support that. And then in the meeting, you don't support it.
Jonathan, so when he said about expanding the factory, that would help, because opposite the Sauber factory is an abattoir that does smell every now and again. So if you get rid of that, I'm sure you have a phenomenal era coming up.
It's already gone.
But looking forward to 2026 and, you know, ushering in this new Audi era, which is so important, you know, not just for your team, but for the whole of Formula One, you know, this new manufacturing era. How do you as a team principal balance focusing on this year, focusing on, you know, how do we deliver performance this year versus how do we focus on next year, with the added, you know, challenge that I think you know, we've spoken about a lot, that with Sauber, you know, it doesn't have those years and years of investment working at the cost cap. You know, before that team wasn't cost cap limited, but other teams like Red Bull were. How do you as a leader manage that focus, both race to race, but also in terms of allowing people to, as you say, embrace new technologies that did need embracing, for example?
It's a journey, you know, and I think we're hugely ambitious in what we're trying to achieve. Our aim is to be winning races and fighting for world championships at the end of the decade. And so those of you that understand Formula One and how difficult it is will know that it's not a straight line there. What you get with Mattia and I is the ability to split the two halves of the business. And it's very much a Venn diagram. You know, there's a lot of overlap in what we're doing. And maybe some of that overlap is how much energy we still put into C45 before we move on to next year's car. So it's a balance. As we sit here now, you probably understand we're focused almost fully on 2026. But what we have is, we have quite a strong car in some situations and at some circuits. We are building and knitting together as a race team. Sauber's an old team, but most of the engineering staff have only been working with each other this year. Some of them didn't start until January. Some of them only left a little while ago.
Well, you weren't there, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, and so what we can do is we can get stronger operationally. And on this journey that we're on, there's going to be some big steps. Mattia and I hope our experience means that some of these hairpins we can straight line, some of the speed bumps, we can see them coming. I'm trying to think 5 years down the road, as well as trying to deal with things that are happening at the moment. And I think Mattia and I, the great thing is, I mean, we have healthy discussions when we don't always agree on something or other, but we're for 90% of the time, we're absolutely fully aligned.
I'm going to throw it open to Q&A. So if you have a question, please, this is your one time to get into a question with Jonathan, please put your hand up. And while we're waiting for you, floods of you to put your hands up, I will ask this question from Racy, who says, what has been the most exciting and unexpected race story of all your years of experience?
Well, I suppose
Abu
Dhabi 2021.
Remind us what happened there, Jonathan. Why was it epic?
I think, well, let's save that for the book. But I think, sorry, who asked the question?
Racy.
Racy, hi. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think it was that, because if you ignore everything else on the human side, being sat there on the pit wall, I'm used to dominating championships and looking like we're going to win them. But for most of that race, it was looking like we were going to lose a championship. So that, for me, showed the emotion of Formula One. That showed the thing about the sport that I love the most. In split second, everything changes, and then you win a world championship.
Right, let's go to the floor. Please stand up, say your name and a question.
Hi, my name's Dan. Do you have a favourite, this is a question for Jonathan, do you have a favourite driver on the grid that's not one of your own?
Do you know, I sometimes say I don't like any of them. I was very fortunate, and I've been very fortunate in my career to work with all sorts of drivers and so many talented people and world champions. But I think people know I'm really close to Max Verstappen and his family. In 1994, Max's father drove for Benetton. And we had one of those seasons when you bond together, especially when the car catches fire in a pit stop, you know. So, I would say Max. And also because, you know, we were on a journey. We were on a journey as a team, rebuilding ourselves, getting ready to look like we could compete for championships. And Max was obviously the real deal and a raw diamond, a rough diamond that we worked together to polish.
On that question, I think everyone's probably got something similar. Who do you think is going to win this weekend? And do you think Max can honestly pressure for the World Championship this year? Because he's closing that gap to the McLarens.
Well, I think it's going to be a Sauber 1-2.
If that happens, I promise, I will run
Don't commit yourself to anything.
You know more than me. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us. Jonathan Wheatley.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy the race.
So thank you to our special guests. We have another question from the audience. If you would like to stand up and tell us your name. Hello.
Hi.
Give us your question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Florence Bell. I'm 10 and I live here in Singapore. My question is for you, Jenny. Who is your favourite Formula One driver and why?
Oh, my favourite driver. You know, you've put me on the spot. I like to think, as part of the BBC, I don't have a particular favourite. My job is to be impartial and try and be as, I suppose, led by the story rather than the personality. I have to say, in my experience, Lewis Hamilton is a name that keeps getting mentioned to me. And everyone thinks, oh, Lewis, isn't he a bit showy? He's not very friendly. I have to say the exact opposite of that is my truth. He has always been very kind, courteous. The first time I went to interview him, he opened the door and said, after you. I did not expect that. And he was very good at describing what it felt like for someone as a new reporter to get into the mindset of a guy who is driving at his ultimate capabilities and taking you into the cockpit with him. And I just thought that was magical. And actually to spend any time with these 20 men who are, they're superhuman. What they can do on track, the mind capacity that they have, it's otherworldly. And every time I sit down with one of the drivers, I remember that and think, I'm so lucky to be in a position where I just get to learn 1% of what they have going for them. So I don't have a favourite, but I'm always impressed by all of them. So thank you, Flo. Does anyone have... You've worked with lots of different drivers. Has anyone stood out to you as exceptional?
So in terms of exceptional drivers that you work with, so one thing I will say is that a bit like being a good parent, even if you have a favourite child, you never tell your child. Because it's about being a good parent, and that's, as a head of strategy, you have two drivers, and actually to be a good head of strategy or a good team principal, even if you prefer one of them, is very important that you actually are fair and you follow the rules of engagement. Max is a phenomenal human being. I've had the pleasure of working with Sebastian Vettel, who is like a big brother to me. He told me to break up with my boyfriend because he was never going to propose.
Yes.
And then when 3 years later, he was like, "I told you." So, as you grow up, I started in the sport when I was 22. I've done this my 15th season. You go from them being kind of like big brothers and heroes to being kind of friends to being them kind of like little brothers to eventually you're talking to someone called Ollie Behrman and he says he reminds me of his mum.
That's not the thing
I was
to
like,
say.
if you DNF in the first race, it's fine, but if you go on those white lines, and so yeah, you do kind of have this emotional dynamic that changes, and that's the great thing is that they're humans, and it's high performance humans. You're trying to get the most out of as a strategist. You want to learn their skills, you want to learn their strengths, their weaknesses, and you want to learn everybody else's as well. You want to play to your opposition's weaknesses and strengths, and the teamwork and the camaraderie inside and outside of the cockpit is one of my favorite things. You have people like Pierre, who is one of Charles's best friends. Charles was my driver in 2018, and in that year, Charles was driving for Sauber, Pierre was driving for Toro Rosso, and we basically only really racing each other in the championship. We'd be kind of like thrashing it out on track. You kind of like cursing their name, and then in the evening, everyone goes out for dinner together. And it's these kind of like weird, beautiful stories that you have. I started dreaming about George Russell for a few years because he was the only driver that was like going to take points off of my team. And then he said, I had a dream last night that I was going to get a point for Williams, and then you put a car in front of me. And it was like one of these moments you actually become friends through the camaraderie. And then, you can't talk about the sport without talking about Lewis Hamilton. He is a great human being, and I mean that kind of from what I say. There's the starfish principle. Obviously, you can't help everybody, but the people that you do help. He's done a lot of work with Access for the University in Cambridge, helping me with that. And he did also hire me for the F1 movie. So now whenever I go into universities, I can say, "Stay in school, kids, because one day you'll get an engineering degree and be paid to work with Brad Pitt."
I like that. Definitely works. If you've got more questions, please do put your hands up. We will get the microphone out to you. I just want to know, guys, your predictions for the championship. The battle is intense. 13 points is all that separates McLaren from winning the constructors' title. And when it comes down to the drivers' title, 25 points is the difference between Lando Norris and top of the championship, Oscar Piastri. Tell us more. What's going to happen?
Oh, great. I get that question.
Oh, yeah.
Why couldn't I get the who's my favorite driver question? No, look, you wouldn't have said that Max was in the hunt a couple of races ago, then he wins 2 on the trot and he's more in the hunt, but it's hard to say that he's in contention. But I do think that it's not going to be so straightforward. Going forward, Oscar has been so cool, calm, and collected over the course of the season, but we saw in Baku that I don't know if it's jitters, I don't know if it's a psychological issue as much as anything else, but when you are perhaps getting a little bit worried about the chasing pack, the last thing you want to do is come to Singapore where you take your mind off something for a split instant and you're in the wall. And obviously the margins are so narrow here in Singapore that you really need to just have 100% confidence in what you do. And I think in that sense, Max is more likely to take the risks, and Max has more of that killer instinct that is required. I'm not giving you a real answer at all, am I? I'm just saying that it's all still in the mix.
I like that. That's absolutely fine. Benson, you can be drawn.
Well, it's one of the most extraordinary title fights I think I've ever seen, because normally when two teammates are title rivals, they hate each other, and it becomes a completely toxic environment within the team. You think of Senna and Prost, you think of Hamilton and Rosberg, but we're not getting that with Norris and Piastri this year. And McLaren, at least on the surface, and it appears to be the truth as well, they've managed to get those two drivers to work together for the good of the team, while also competing separately for the championship. Now, not everyone in Formula 1 agrees with the way McLaren have been operating things. But they've managed to keep both drivers buying into what the team philosophy is and the team culture. It's interesting, Jonathan was talking about culture earlier, and Andrea Stella, the McLaren team principal, and Zach Brown, the CEO, have created what appears to be an incredible culture there. So to not only bring that team forward from pretty much the back of the grid, not much more than 2 years ago, to about to become world champion constructors for the second year in a row, but also to have two drivers competing for the championship in the way that they have, without them falling out with each other and without them falling out with the team, or at least one of them falling out with the team. Having said that, one of the things that's interesting about Formula 1, I think, and one of the things I've always found to be most fascinating about it, is it strips people bare. You can't hide who you are because the environment's so intense. And Oscar Piastri had spent all year with everybody fating him as this guy who was incredibly cool and solid and didn't make mistakes, and yet he had a weekend in Baku. It was like someone else was in the car. He crashed in free practice, he crashed in qualifying, he crashed in the race. And I think if you said that was going to happen to anybody in Formula One before that weekend, they would have just gone, no, of course it's not. So that's just brought in a whole load of new questions about how this championship battle might play out. And those questions will be in his mind as well as everybody else's. Similar track in some ways to Baku in the sense of it's not as high speed, but the walls are here, lots of right angle corners. How is he going to reset mentally? How is Norris going to, because Norris didn't take as much of an advantage out of that weekend for Piastri as he should have done. So does he come in thinking positively, or is he thinking, I'd let that one slip a bit? They've got 69 points is a big gap to Verstappen from Piastri, but it won't stop them thinking about, oh my goodness, what could Max do this weekend? So we're into what Alex Ferguson used to call squeaky bum time, and it's always really interesting to see how people handle that sort of pressure.
Oscar and Lando are friends, well, we assume they're friends now, but is that sustainable right up until the end of the season? Because as we said, looking ahead to 2026, we have no idea what's going to happen. Neither man has won a championship yet. They could see this as potentially their best chance. When that's on the line, are they still going to be all good in the paddock afterwards?
I think friends will be stretching it. You know, they're not going out to dinner out of choice together, but they are getting on surprisingly well for two Formula One drivers in the situation that they are. And I think it's because, you know, you hear them parroting the same line that Stella comes out with, which is that we're in this not just for this year. We hope to be competing for the championship with McLaren as teammates for some years to come. And although it's easy to say, that's a difficult thing to then carry forward into the way you behave. But so far they have managed to do that. And I think it speaks to the strength of the leadership that we've seen at McLaren, that they weren't able to do at McLaren in the past, for example, and they weren't able to do at Mercedes. Toto Wolff was talking just a couple of races ago about the regrets that he had about the way he had handled Hamilton and Rosberg. And it was in the context of how Stella and Brown are handling Piastri and Norris. But just because it's been going fine up to now doesn't mean it's going to carry on going fine. You always get to these pinch points where, or you tend to get to these pinch points where something tips over, and that might not happen, but it also very well might.
I always think we're waiting for that point, and we've been waiting for it for a long time this year. We waited for it from the first race, then we thought in Canada maybe that was the moment, was Norris going up the back of Piastri, but actually that didn't come to anything either. So I think they've done such an amazing job at not losing the plot when they're just two guys, as you say, maybe going for their only chance of a world championship, and they know each other so well, they're allowed to look at the data from each other. They're in the same team, and I just congratulate McLaren for steering that ship as well as they have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a millennial white girl, I can't help but use a Harry Potter equivalent, which is every Formula One team sees themselves as Gryffindor and sees their enemy as Slytherin. You know, Mercedes, Gryffindor, Red Bull, Slytherin. But everyone had no idea how McLaren, by being the ultimate Hufflepuff team, have somehow managed to win a championship. It was kind of like, you know, the bit at the end of the season last year where everyone was like, wow, they actually did it by just being really, nice. And, you know, it was, I think all of F1 had to take stock, and the whole year, you know, you joke, but, you know, you speak to them and they had their rules. A lot of people, you know, didn't agree with them. A lot of people, you know, myself included, I'd say I'd prioritized one driver. I'd have focused on one championship. You know, I was raised in the house of Scuderia Ferrari, where the Drivers' Championship is the goal. It's not the Constructors' Championship in that team. It's very different setup to a lot of other Formula One teams. But you know, you have to compliment them. They've built a stunning car. They've created an amazing culture, top down, and you know, I think they've done a phenomenal job. But having said that, actually getting a championship over a line is never done until it's done. So I think, you know, the constructors is one thing, but the drivers' championship, you know, it's going to be so fascinating. You know, we always had this mantra at Scuderia Ferrari that, you know, you can never count someone out until they're mathematically out, even when it looks slightly silly from the outside. Our best example of this, I think, is 2018 with, you know, Sebastian Vettel versus Lewis Hamilton, where from the outside you say Lewis is going to win another championship, easy. Sebastian was so distraught after the Mexican Grand Prix because that was the race where it was mathematically no longer possible for him to win the championship. He went into the Mercedes garage, he shook everybody's hand, accepting defeat. But if you'd asked him blind until that moment, until that morning of that race, he still believed there's a chance. And Max will still believe there is a chance until there is no longer a chance, and never count him out. And I think it doesn't mean that we can't create a champion within Lando or Oscar, but champions are like made in this crucible of how do you deal with the pressure? How do you execute on different track layouts? On paper, you would say this is a Lando Norris track. The low speed corners have been where he's still been stronger than Oscar across the whole season. But then you say if it rains in the race, you've seen the way that Max can drive. If you look at the latest upgrades on that Red Bull, is it going to give them a little step ahead? And I think it's going to be so fascinating because the reality is, nobody really knows, how people perform. Even yourself, you have no idea how you're going to perform until you are at squeaky bum time.
That is definitely for sure. I don't think we've got any more questions, so I am going to ask you a question, if that's okay, and I'm going to ask you in a minute too. I want to find out who you think is going to win the race this weekend. So we'll start off with this weekend. The race winner will be Lando Norris. Yeah. Oh, very quiet. Oh, you have to shout. You have to shout, otherwise it doesn't work on radio. Just you. Just one person. Okay, let's go with Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen? I mean, I'm not even going to say Yuki Tsunoda. That feels mean, but I'm not going to do it. It's just no. Charles Leclerc? No, the room is silent. And Lewis Hamilton? There we go. Have I missed anyone out? Shout out anyone that you think... No, that's it.
Jonathan's around the corner. Hulkenberg!
Let's go along the panel. Andrew Benson, who do you think is going to win this weekend? And don't say McLaren.
You mean as a driver?
Yes.
I don't know, it's a tough one. I think the audience were backing Piastri, and yeah, I think I'll go with Piastri as well.
Ruth?
Honestly, it's a really engineering answer, but based on circuit distribution of cornering and where drivers have been strong and statistically where the downforce package leans to, I think it's Lando Norris's race to lose. And I think if he doesn't win this race, then that is going to be a real key turning point in his championship, because I think on paper, this is the one he has to win because it's his strongest against his teammate and against Max.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I'm surprised it was so quiet when you said Lando's name, actually, because he's got the experience in winning here. And I just think when it comes down to that mental steel, he has a little bit more than Oscar.
I think, conversely, the opposite. I think that Oscar has more mental steel than Lando Norris. But for this weekend, and this weekend only, I'm probably going to put it out there and go Max Verstappen. I know odds are against him. He's never won here. He's never got pole here. 10 of the 15 races have been won from pole position. But I just feel he wants to close that gap. He wants to get back at it. So for me, I'm just going to back Max Verstappen for a win. Who knows? That's it. Time is up. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all our wonderful guests, especially Jonathan and Alicia, who have now left the building. You'll all be in the background. We're going to do a selfie from up here.
Here we go.
So if some of you at the back want to stand up, you're more than welcome to. We'll pull some funny faces, that sort of thing, just to prove that you were here too, boss.
Alrighty.
Right.
Fantastic.
Lovely stuff. Thank you.